welcome back to week 3 of Joyful Journeys. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Rona Jobe. Rona is the founder and CEO of LVL-Up Strategies. But not only that, she's also on the board of directors at Health Betterment Initiative, DC, and she's on the associate board here at Girls on the Run of Northern Virginia. So she's truly dedicated to empowering women in their careers and in her professional life, while also empowering health and confidence across generations in her personal life. So truly a pleasure to have you here. Rona and I are going to be chatting today about something that is way in her wheelhouse, which is goal setting. And it also happens to be the topic that our middle school participants here at Girls on the Run will be diving into this week. So Rona, could you just start off and tell me a little bit about your journey? What brought you to the line of work that you're in today? And what were some goals that you had to set along the way?
Of course, Catherine. Okay, so today, as founder and CEO of LVL-Up Strategies, we are a consulting firm, for lack of a better explanation, and we work everything from management, consulting, strategy development, implementation, and goal setting. We work on HR issues or HR needs of small businesses and government agencies alike. And also communications. So what brought us here to kind of this day and where LVL-Up is I have management consulting as a background. And when my husband joined the State Department of Foreign Service and we were posted to Brasilia, Brazil, I was able to work remotely from there, but then realized that, that was really sort of the end of my career progression, right? When you're having to move overseas to another post, there wasn't really a lot of options to keep progressing in your career. There were very few options that you could really pursue, but it's incredibly difficult, especially if you're if you're a driven person. And so fast forward to about 6 years after we had been posted to Brazil, I decided to open up LVL-Up Strategies with another friend of mine who was also running a business in Brasilia. She's my co-founder, Laura Jennings. And we just talked about how we could really help this community find and maintain career progression while they're moving from post to post, and at the same time still achieve the goal of helping small businesses really get to their next level, because a lot of small businesses, as you probably know, do struggle with some of the growth needs that they have, like goal setting and streamlining operations, making sure communications is key as far as how they're messaging to their employees and also to their potential clients. And you'd ask, what were some goals that we had set along the way? Well, in terms of the type of work that we do, we wanted to make sure that we had certain certifications in place, that we had a lot of SOPs established, and we had a lot of specific pathways for the people that work at LVL-Up to get to their next level of their career, and also goals for some of our clients. So I feel like we live and breathe goals day in and day out, inside and outside of LVL-Up. So you could pick literally like a specific part of the company, and we can dive deep into that.
Well, I love hearing that, and I love hearing just how much you all live and breathe goals. I'm sure that it can be tiring sometimes to be having to think forward so much, but I want to help you think backwards a little bit and think about is there a goal that you achieved on your way to starting LVL-Up, or maybe even before that made you particularly proud and has kind of helped shine with you going forward?
Well, there's a couple ones, but the most recent one that we had is we were recently designated as an SBA 8A company, which basically allows us to participate in this program to receive training and technical assistance to make sure that we are competitive in the government contracting space. And so that was a goal we had early on, when the company turned 2 years old, and many of our wonderful supporters kept saying, hey, you should definitely bring this to the government as well, and here's a pathway to do it, and here is this program that you should definitely be a part of. And I do remember I actually forgot until I looked at our notes from our last kind of state of LVL-Up meeting at the very beginning of the year. I said, okay, 8A this year by September. And lo and behold, we literally got our designation the day before September. So August 30th, the very last business day. So that's one goal that we had that I think recently came to fruition. So
Oh, well, congratulations. And it sounds
yeah.
like you had all of the different pieces in place as far as, knowing when you wanted to achieve it and knowing all the different steps that had to go into it. I'm going to switch gears a little bit because I know, sometimes it's not all celebration. Sometimes we can set a goal and we can miss that goal. I know working at Girls on the Run, just being part of a local council, there are a lot of ideas that we have that we want to meet. We might not meet them in the time that we set. So what's the time that you didn't meet a goal that you had set, and what did you do to try to get yourself right on the right path and feel good?
Well, before I answer that question, I do want to mention that this happens a lot too, where you don't meet your goals, and that's okay. And I tell my kids, failure is part of the process, and it should be. You can't always be experiencing wins every day because not only do you not learn, it's also highly unrealistic. So there have been many goals that we have missed, and I personally have missed before. I do recall one particular year where we were incredibly motivated by reaching a certain revenue goal, and we had like great growth the past couple of years prior to, and we just decided, you know what, let's go big for this year and let's go for this goal. Here's our revenue goal, and we didn't reach it that year. And halfway through the year, it was looking well, and then towards the latter half of the year it didn't go so well, and all we did was at the end of the year, it's disappointing not to hit a goal, but we looked at it and we went, okay, where did we go wrong? Was it the goal setting and the expectation that went wrong? What part of the implementation specifically went wrong? And not necessarily went wrong, that might be the wrong word for it. Sometimes it's just that you may not have the right resources at the time, right? Or you may not be in the right mindset at the time, or you may have not factored in X, Y, and Z into that goal and into implementing that goal. And so we made adjustments, and then both in the goal setting process and also in the implementation process, and we did it again and we tried again. And so, and I think that's kind of the wonderful thing about goal setting is you do set a goal out there, you don't reach it, but you get pretty far into it, and you get that practice of going after that very specific goal. Very similar to running, right? Like you're trying to run a half marathon, maybe you're aiming to run a full marathon, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't get to a full marathon within the time frame that I said. But guess what? I can run a half marathon, and I've never been able to do that before.
Yeah, I love that. And also, I think that there can be sort of a difference between that final outcome goal that you have and the process goals that you have in between. What is going to get you to that final outcome? And maybe you don't reach that final outcome, but you took all of these really to get there. So, maybe it's something like with our participants in the Girls on the Run program, where at the end of the season, their final goal is to run a 5K together to complete something that seems just so insurmountable. It's almost hard to imagine how you're going to get there. But at each practice, you're spending just a little bit more time running laps after you've done your lessons, and adding a couple laps as your goal at the end of each day, and seeing where you can get. And so that is something that we do at each practice, is set a goal for how many laps are you going to run. And some of that also takes an understanding of what your environment is, right? Because some of our teams might meet on a playground, and so your lap is short. How many could you make happen? Maybe your school actually has a track, and so your lap is a quarter mile. How are you going to set your goals there instead? So I do like being able to sort of reframe it a little bit. Even if you're not able to achieve that big goal yet, are you making all of those important steps forward? And how can you find the victories with those too?
When we are creating implementation plans for our clients, a lot of the bigger question that we have sometimes is, why is it created this way? And a lot of times and we get that question because they will see that the way that the implementation plan is created is it's tackling more habits rather than very aggressive milestones and goals, right? And I taught a workshop several months ago actually on this, and they asked, well, when do you choose how aggressive your goals and your milestones are versus just building habits? And they said, well, that's the beauty of goal setting and going after them, is it is about practice. If you've never done it before, if you've never run before, I'm not going to ask you to run, a half marathon, right? Let's try running for 30 seconds straight first, and let's see how that goes. And that's a milestone. And it's the actual practice of implementing the goal itself that's actually the bigger part of goal setting. And I think that sets up a lot of realistic expectations for folks in business and also in their personal lives, on what it is and how it is that they can achieve and get to those goals.
Yeah, and it's really, those big goals are actually just a series of small goals that you get to meet along the way. Um,
Yeah.
so I know you've talked a little bit about some of the things that you try to work towards with your clients. Are there any other common goals that you have them work on? And to you, what are some of the most important components of a goal? What are your essentials to make sure are included in setting those goals with them?
So two-part question. The first one is, what are the common goals that we work with clients? We have a strategic quarterly planning program that we work with a lot of our small businesses, and majority of them always want to tackle a pain point that they have so that they can move away from working in the business, as in being a technician of that business, to working on the business. Um, so a lot of that means process, right? We try to figure out and pinpoint, okay, you're doing a lot of this. What is the goal by the end of the 3 months that we're going to try to achieve? Maybe it's really streamline that process or set of processes and finally get it delegated to somebody, which means it's a lot of thinking and reviewing and deciding what is essential about these specific tasks and who's going to take over them. But at the end of those 3 months, now this business owner has a set of, you know, tasks that they're able to delegate and give, which gives them maybe another 5 hours in a week or another 10 hours in a week, which then frees them up to do other things. So that's typically a very common goal that we get, although it doesn't come out that way at first, right? A lot of it will come out as, oh, I'd like to reach X amount of sales goal for this quarter and stuff. And then we dive deep, and this is going into the second part of your question on what are these components. We dive deep into, okay, how can you make that happen? Okay, great. What are your numbers in terms of trying to reach that sales goals? How many people do you have to talk to? How many people do you have to reach out to? How many referrals do you have in place to actually follow up and nurture? Oh, it's this many, it's this many, it's this many. And how long does that take? And they'll go, oh, this takes X amount of time. And we're like, great. Can you make those that amount of time in a week, in a day? And if the answer is no, what do we now do? So we end up having to actually take a step or two back before they can actually be in that position to get to that next goal that they want. So like you said, resources. We're always taking a look at business owners' resources. What do you have and what do you have available and where you are now to actually get to that goal? So that's one piece. And the second piece is really humanizing the implementation part of that goal, where we ask, okay, great, do you have travel plans in place? Are you particularly busy this quarter? Start thinking about your business as like a season. There's seasons into, each month, each year. Are you in a good season to pursue this? And I had one client that was like, you know what? My son's in travel soccer. I drive a lot. I don't know if I could actually make that happen. And then we start to ask and peel back, questions like, okay, is this, I know this with small business owners, the personal and professional are so intertwined and integrated that you really have to consider both sides of that person's life to make goals come true. And so we walk back and go, okay, what resources do you have? Can you apply that resource here? Do you have somebody to pick up and drop off? And is that worth the investment if you do have somebody to pick up and drop off? And sometimes they'll say yes, and sometimes they will say, actually, no, I really enjoy that part of my day because that's my one-on-one time, with my child. And we're like, okay, now that's the boundary that we're working with. Let's figure out now, what can you really accomplish with focus and energy, the right focus and the right energy at the end of the quarter.
Oh, and that you really do truly dive deep into all the different pieces that come together. And whether it's a small business owner or an entrepreneur, what have you, your personal life and your business life can get really intertwined. What's happening in one affects the other, and so being able to really know what is going on and what is influencing all those things is super, super important. So I appreciate that you're doing that for your clients, and having that holistic understanding, because you could try to address one in a vacuum, but it would not get you to the place that you want to be. So I know that we have a number of listeners listening in with us today, and whether they're a GOATer participant or a grown-up, do you have any advice to them for setting their next goal and how they can achieve it?
Yes, and my number one advice with goal setting is always allow yourself to dream. Now, as you mentioned, larger goals are just smaller goals in succession, right? And when I say allow yourself to dream, that doesn't mean, drive yourself to the point of exhaustion to really get to a certain place at a certain time. But when you allow yourself to dream, you start to find sort of, okay, to get there, I need to get here. Maybe that's what I focus on this quarter or this month, because then it'll move the needle on where I'm trying to go. But I think a lot of folks don't allow themselves to dream sometimes when they set goals, longer term goals, is because they think about what is going to stop them rather than what is going to get them there. And so that's my number one advice: allow yourself to dream.
I love that. And I know also that there are probably a lot of parents who like you have kids of varying ages who are all in different stages of maybe being able to conceptualize and set goals for themselves, and see what their future might hold. So do you have any advice to parents who are listening who want to be able to support their kids in making and achieving goals?
I think my one advice is, which has worked for me, is ask very specific questions and get them to communicate their thought process rather than specific answers that you're looking for. Because a lot of times I've actually found, and my own kids have taught me this, where they will explain sort of, well, this is what I was thinking, and this is why, I said that. Where, naturally we would kind of be annoyed and go, oh, you're not answering the question I asked you to answer. But understanding that every single individual, every single child has a different way of thinking, a different way of communicating, really getting them to walk you through their thought process helps so much in getting them to explain not just how they view the world, but it also continues to open up that those lines of communication, which really helps when they get to the teenage years.
And I think that really applies to all of us, right? Even as we become grown-ups and adults, we all might think through things differently. So I think that's something that we can carry forward to every conversation that we have in the coming weeks. Is there might be some different thought processes happening for all of us. We might all have different big dreams that we're dreaming towards, but I really appreciate your advice, your thoughts, the work that you're doing in the community. So thank you again for being with us today. This was Rona Jobe with LVL-Up Strategies. To our listeners out there, thank you for joining us for week 3 of Joyful Journeys, and we will see you all next week.
This episode of Joyful Journeys is brought to you by Girls on the Run of Northern Virginia.